everybody, welcome back to my channel. I have lipstick all over my hand. If it looks different today, it's because I finally have new lighting and you can see my face now. Yay! Okay, but seriously, today is going to be, seriously, my nose is so itchy. Today's not going to be a beauty related video. It is going to be a real life video. And I'm going to be talking about my anxiety issues because I have a lot of them. I haven't really been asked on YouTube very much, but I have been asked several times on Facebook and Twitter about my anxiety, so I figured I'd make a video about it. This is my third time trying to film this video. The first two times it didn't come out the way I wanted it to. I don't want this to be like, oh, poor me, I have anxiety video. I want this to be a video where I can share how I felt and what's happened to me, and maybe it will help somebody. So that is the point of me making this video. So to start off, I wanted to talk a little bit about my history with anxiety and when it first started, all of that. So the first time I can remember having a panic attack, I was about 8 years old. My parents had recently gotten a divorce, and I was now having to go to an after daycare program. And I had this obsession with my mom not showing up to come get me, or that she would get hurt or in a car accident. I was obsessed with this all the time. I don't know why. But it caused me a lot of anxiety as a child. There was a day, well, let me start with this. My mom used to come pick me up at 5:15 every single day from aftercare at elementary school. One day she got stuck at the train from work, and my mom will remember this story. So if you're watching, you already know what I'm going to be talking about. Yes, my mom will not forget this. Every day at 5:15 she would come get me, and this particular day she got stuck at the train, and it happened to be just a very slow moving train. If you ever lived in Florida near the train tracks, you know what I'm talking about. You could get stuck at a train for 20 minutes. Well, it turned out that she was almost 20 minutes late. And in that 20 minutes, I had a complete meltdown. What I now know is an anxiety attack. I wasn't coherent of that as an 8-year-old, but looking back on it now, it was an actual panic attack. I was crying, I was hysterical, I was very scared. I felt like I was losing control, and I didn't understand why I felt this way, because none of the other kids did this. So I kind of felt, I felt very alone in my feelings. Like I said, I know my mom did know that I would get very upset if she was late, or if she didn't get home when she said she was going to get home, stuff like that. But I don't necessarily know if she knew it was anxiety, and I don't necessarily know that I knew that either as a child. But looking back on it now, it definitely was. So let's fast forward to about age 14. My mom got remarried. This was very hard for me, mainly because me and my stepdad had a lot of issues with each other. Everything's fine now that I'm an adult, but back then there was a lot of issues, and I think a lot of it stemmed from feeling like I was going to lose my mom. So when she remarried, I did have a lot of anxiety, and I feel like it was because I had that recurring feeling again, like I was going to lose my mom, which I know sounds ridiculous, but as a child, this was my mindset. And especially my teenage years, those are very formative years. She had been in the relationship for 3 years prior, and I really did struggle because I felt like I was not the first priority anymore, which is probably far from the truth. But in my mind, I created this illusion that I was not first and that my mom was going to be taken away. So those are two things from when I was pretty young that I can remember actually having anxiety. I was about 15, almost 16, when I finally realized what I was experiencing was anxiety. And funny enough, it was one of those teenage magazines that you know, J14 or Tire Beat, one of those really teeny bopper magazines that you see at the drugstore. And I was reading it at my friend's house, and there was an article about depression and anxiety, and when I started reading the symptoms of an anxiety attack, everything just came flashing back to me. And I remember that day so clearly because I remember calling my mom, and I was crying and she didn't understand why I was upset. And I was like, Mom, I think I'm having anxiety attacks, and you know, I really need to get help. So lucky enough, which I know I'm very lucky, that my mom did take me to get help and get medication, because I know a lot of teenagers aren't taken seriously when they say they have anxiety and depression. So I was very grateful that my mom did take me seriously right away and take me to get medication so that I didn't suffer. She made me a doctor's appointment. We just went to my regular family doctor, and she prescribed me an SSRI Paxil, a very common antidepressant. So that was basically my teenage years. So my mom did get me medicated, like I said. I struggled, you know, on and off with panic attacks, and my overall anxiety wasn't as bad, but I still did suffer from acute panic attacks. But I was able to live my teenage life. I was a very mopey teenager, a very depressed teenager. I'm still a depressed adult and a mopey adult, so not much has changed, but that's just how I was as a teenager. Woe is me. But now I actually have real life problems, so I should have taken advantage of being a teenager. Anyways, that's the note for all you teenagers. Please just remember that you're gonna look back and be like, I want to be a teenager again. Anyways, moving on to my adult life. There was actually a point where I got off medication. I was 18, I was about to get my driver's license. And when I got my driver's license, I made the decision to get off medication because I felt it was a responsible decision, and I didn't want to be driving while I was on medication. So I got off. I got my driver's license, and everything seemed to be fine. I was aware that at some point I may need to go back on medication. But I had a car, I got my license, I had my first job, I was going to high school 1 day a week out of 5. I had a major case of senioritis. So yeah, my anxiety was lessened quite a bit, and not on medication. I'm sorry if I'm all over the place, because when I talk about my anxiety, it makes me anxious, and then my brain is like, and it goes a million different ways. So anyways, what the fuck was I talking about? Oh yeah. So I was off medication, doing great. No anxiety, not even a panic attack. I started dating Keith, who is now my husband, and everything was good. And then around 19 years old, when I moved out of my mom's house, I started to have really bad panic again. And I really wrestled with the decision to go back on medication, because I don't like the idea of medication to fix things. I'm like that with everything. But it got to a point where I was really, really struggling in just my everyday life. So I did make the decision to go back on medication because it was affecting every aspect of my life. I was living with Keith. It was affecting our relationship, friendships, my work, everything. So I made the decision to go back on, and I was on Zoloft, and that really helped me. This video feels like it's just a promotion for antidepressants. It's really not. I have just found that really lessens my overall anxiety. Not so much my panic attacks, just the overall craziness of anxiety, if you know what I mean, like the generalized non-stop worrying. Any SSRI type medication, Zoloft, Paxil, Celexa, yeah, Prozac, any of those. I would say the worst part of my life was around 2011. Keith and I got married, we bought a house, and everything was fine for the first couple of months. And then I remember having a really bad panic attack at Publix. Keith was with me, and I was standing in line, and I said I needed to go outside because I was starting to panic, and I could feel myself starting to lose control. And I really hadn't had this feeling in a while, so I was really letting it get to me. So I walked to the parking lot and I was going to the car, and I started to have such a intense panic attack, the worst one I ever experienced in my entire life, still to this day. And I felt like I was going to pass out or die or have a heart attack. I don't know. I felt dizzy. I felt like I was going to black out. I couldn't catch my breath. I felt like I was going crazy. I felt like everyone was staring at me. And I barely made it to the car. And Keith came back with our groceries and was like, "What is wrong? Like, you know, what's going on?" And, you know, I explained what happened. He was like, "Oh, you know, it's going to be okay." And we went home. And for the rest of the night, I just sat on the couch and I was like, thinking to myself, like, I can't believe I just had this horrible, horrible panic attack. Like, I was mad at myself. It's stupid because it's something you can't control. But I was so pissed, and I really let it get to me, and I really dwelled on it. I was so frightened by that panic attack and feeling like I was going to die, or that I was having some sort of medical emergency. It really got in my head. And I started to slowly avoid everything that made me anxious. And I can tell you, this is the absolute worst thing you can do. Avoidance feeds anxiety. And if there's anything you take from this video, please remember that avoidance feeds your anxiety. It feeds it, and it turns it into a vicious, vicious monster. I slowly stopped hanging out with friends. I just completely ruled out that I couldn't go to the store anymore. That was just out of the question. So I didn't. And for almost, it's 2015 now. So for 3.5 years, I didn't go to the store. No stores. Isn't that freaking crazy? I didn't go to restaurants. I did not leave the house. If I did go out, it was in the car, and I did not get out of the car. This sounds crazy. I realize that. And it is. But it was a really, really horrible time in my life, and I was in a very dark place. I was sabotaging my relationship with Keith. My family didn't really understand my issues, and, you know, if you've never experienced something like agoraphobia, which is the fear of panic attacks and often leads to people never leaving their house, it's a very hard thing to understand, and I totally, totally get that. But it happened to me, and for 3.5 years, I didn't leave my house. Keith has always been very supportive. Of course, he was frustrated with me at times, and just like, you know, frustrated that I was wasting my life and I wasn't doing anything to get better, and I really felt like I couldn't get better. I really felt like I was going to be like this the rest of my life. So he did all of our shopping. He did all of the outside errands around the house. There were actually days where I wouldn't even leave my bedroom because I felt like it was unsafe to leave my bedroom. That didn't happen very often. It wasn't a regular thing like not leaving the house, but it did happen. I remember a specific day where I never left my bedroom. That is insane. I know. But that is just how vicious anxiety can become if you feed into it and you let it control your life and you avoid things and let it win. And I have found that just letting your anxiety happen, no matter where you are, no matter what situation you're in, letting it happen and realizing that it's temporary and it's going to go away has helped me so much. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got out of this state of anxiety and agoraphobia, severe agoraphobia. I just had a breaking point. I literally reached my breaking point, and I realized that everything in my life was falling apart because of this. I never left my house. I was just like with my dogs all the time, talking to my dogs like a freaking crazy person. I mean, I love my dogs, but it was getting crazy. It was sabotaging my relationship, and just everything in my life was becoming very toxic. So I just had a breaking point where I realized that I needed to change and I needed to get my life together because I couldn't live like this. Otherwise, I was just going to kill myself. And I would never, I'm too much of a pansy for that. So killing myself's out of the question. Suicide's a very serious issue. I'm just saying, for me, I know that in my mentality I'm a pansy, so I would never have the guts to kill myself, but it is a very serious issue, and there are people out there with severe anxiety that end up killing themselves because they feel like they have no other way out than to do that. And that's so sad because there is a lot of help for anxiety. So anyways, back to my own version of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is often referred to as CBT in the psychology community. I did a lot of research on this on my own time, read a lot of books. Basically, I spent a lot of time just researching anxiety and mental disorders and all things related because I was desperately trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And I realized that there's really nothing wrong with me. I just have anxiety. And yes, that is a mental condition. I do have severe depression, but I was making things worse for myself, like I said, by avoiding. So I read a lot about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and so I started to do it on myself, on my own. I started out very, very small. I would go into the gas station and I would go in there and buy something very quickly, having a complete meltdown, mind you, the whole entire time, and get back to the car as fast as I could. I wasn't driving at the time because that was another thing that I could not do. Yeah, ridiculous. Then I started to do bigger things, like go to Walgreens, which sounds ridiculous to most people, but for me it was a huge thing. And no matter how anxious I felt in these situations, I just kept pushing myself through it. And I kept telling myself that this is just a panic attack, you're not having a heart attack, you are not dying, you are not gonna pass out, nobody is looking at you. Everybody is so consumed with themselves that they're not paying attention to what you're doing. And anxiety, especially social anxiety, is actually very narcissistic if you think about it, because you always think everybody's paying attention to you all the time. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but if you boil it down, I mean, the thoughts are very, everybody's looking at me, and I have that all the time still, so make that what you will. So I then conquered another fear of going out to eat. This sounds so stupid, I realize that, but it took me a long time. And the first couple times that I went out to eat with Keith, it was in places that were very fast, where you could sit down, where I wouldn't be trapped for a long time, and I could get out if I needed to. I persevered through every situation that I put myself in, even though I was having anxiety, horrible anxiety. I never let myself say, oh, I need to go back to the car because that's my safe place, or I need to go home because that's my safe place. I just kept pushing myself to stay in that place and realizing that nothing bad was going to happen to me and that my anxiety attack would end. So that was really helpful. It took me over, I want to say about 3 months before I would actually go into a smaller store and feel okay. I remember going to Walgreens for the first time by myself, and Keith was not feeling well, and I was like, oh well, I'm gonna go to the store because I can do that now. Oh, it sounds so ridiculous when I say it out loud. And I went to Walgreens by myself, and I went and got him what he needed. I don't remember what it was. I think he wasn't feeling well. And I came home, and I remember feeling like I was on top of the world. I was like, I nailed it. It was such a confidence boost for me, and it really helped me. I was like, oh, well, I can do anything now. Yeah. So next came Walmart. Walmart, I hate Walmart. And if anybody who knows me very well is watching this, you know that I hate Walmart. I went to Walmart with Keith, and I had a freaking meltdown. A stage 10 fucking meltdown. But I just kept pushing myself. I didn't let my anxieties even though every bone in my body wanted to go back to the car and just sit there until, you know, I knew as soon as I got to the car my anxiety would be over, but I wasn't letting myself do that. I wasn't letting myself take the easy way out or escape. I was pushing through it until I finished my task, even though I was having anxiety, to prove to my brain that nothing was going to happen. This does work over time. I promise you, if you have any similar issues to what I do, this will help you. It's been proven by psychologists for years and years now. So the next thing was I had to get on a plane. I originally had scheduled a trip to Los Angeles to go to a taping of The Big Bang Theory, which is my favorite television show. And unfortunately, work got in the way. There was a conference in LA the same time that I had already scheduled to go on this trip, and so I ended up having to work through the whole thing, which is fine because I did get to see friends while I was out there, and that was a really cool experience. And so yeah, getting on a plane was very, very difficult for me. Anybody with anxiety issues like me will know that the feeling of being trapped and not being able to escape a situation is just, that's like a death sentence. But I did get on the plane. I took enough Xanax to kill a horse, and it didn't even touch me. I was still having a panic attack. But I made it through the 6-hour flight, and I landed in LA, and it was the best vacation of my entire life. I didn't have anxiety on the trip once I was off the plane and out of that freaking airport. That was just, oh yeah. But after that, I had the best time, and being away from home used to be a really scary thing for me, and the fact that I was 4,000 miles away from my house and not even thinking about it and having a great time just showed me how good life can be when you don't let this control you. Yeah, so now I live like a normal person now. Normal, I use that term, you know, very loosely, because what the hell is normal? I do everything that I want to do now. I go everywhere I want to go now. Some days it's harder than others. I still have anxiety every single place I go into, especially if I'm by myself. I still go, even when I'm with Keith and we go to Walmart and I'm walking around, and he will see that I am like freaking out on the inside, and he will say, you know, do you want to go to the car? And no, I cannot go to the car. I refuse. I'm not letting the anxiety win. So yes, even though I do still struggle with it very much, it's a lot less than it was. It's a lot better than it was. And it's very freeing. In your mind, it's very freeing to know that you're not going to let your anxiety win. And I just made a really crazy face when I said that. It's freeing to know that you're not going to let the anxiety win. And it really gives you peace of mind. What also gives you peace of mind is Xanax. I'm sorry. I know that a lot of people don't like Xanax because it's a controlled substance and it's addictive, but let me just tell you, it gets me through my daily life, so I will do what I need to do. I still have a job, I work, and I take care of my dogs, and yeah, so I don't abuse my medication. In case anybody's wondering, I currently take 100 milligrams of Zoloft once a day, and then I take 0.5 milligrams of Xanax 3 times a day. Sometimes I don't take that much. You know, it just depends on the day. If I've had a bad day, I'm gonna take 3. But, you know, some days I don't need that much. And it's never a feeling where I'm zonked out or anything. It's just, I feel like normal. It just makes me feel normal. Like I said, if you take anything away from this video, it is that avoiding anxiety will feed your anxiety. And it's the worst thing you can do. I promise you. As far as depression, I do struggle very much with depression. I think more so now I struggle with depression more than I do anxiety. I'm a very introverted person. I am not the greatest at communicating how I feel. I do have bad thoughts, nothing that I would ever act on, but sometimes I do have scary thoughts and I'm very depressed, and I struggle with that every single day. But I try to be positive as much as I can. There are days when I'm just having a bad day and I want to kill everybody. And Keith will tell me, you can't kill people. So yeah, that is that. And I would be happy to answer any questions that anybody has. If you are struggling with anxiety or depression and you just want somebody to talk to, I would be happy to talk to you. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not licensed. I've just read a lot about psychology, and studied it myself. I did take classes, actually, college level classes in high school. So I have a basic understanding, but I'm not licensed. The best would be to go to a professional that can help you. But I would be happy to answer any questions. And if you just need somebody to talk to, I'll be happy to talk to you about whatever. If you just want to unload on me, please feel free. I am glad to talk to anybody. If I can help you, great. I'm going to leave the suicide hotline down below because I believe that is so important. Lost too many people to suicide, especially in my personal life. I've known people that have died because of suicide, and I just really think that it's unfortunate. So I am going to leave that phone number down below. Please, if you're ever feeling suicidal, use that phone number. It is very, very important because that is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I know that is so overused, but it is so true. So yeah, please feel free to talk to me. If you have any questions, let me know. I will be happy to talk to you about it. And yeah, that will do it for now. Hit the like button if you like this video. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of me now that I have good lighting and not crappy videos. And I will see you next time. Bye. Red lips.